And what are we talking about today?
I might want to make this a three-parter.
It's intertwined, right? Because North Korea doesn't say boo without the approval of the Chinese. And if they say to the North Koreans, get going, there's a reason for that.
Hey, Suze.
Morning.
Are you going to the beach?
Yep. See?
Oh, I was just joking. Are you really? Oh, excellent.
Yeah, it's 7 o'clock.
Beautiful woman, nice living on the beach. Happy for you.
No snow.
But I think we have to start. I have to start with what's going on with the banking system. It's too much in our face. We have to talk about this because it's so urgent what's going on, and no one is really still yet, I think, paying attention. I don't think it has hit. I don't think it has hit the zeitgeist out there yet in the public.
I think you're right. Yeah.
So that's what I thought we would do. This is the Hey Ed YouTube channel, and I am your host, moderator, and all-around nice guy. And we are lucky that we're able to get Rob Bruss back on the program. Our really good friend in that little country across the pond that's better known as America's mini-me in Australia. Hey, Rob, how you doing, buddy?
G'day, mate. I'm really well. How about yourself?
Living the dream. What we're going to do here, folks, is I think I'm going to end up making this a three-parter, because Rob and I we like to take our time talking, and our last conversation went on for 2 hours, and poor people who sat through that. What's currently going on in the U.S. banking system and by proxy the rest of the world. I did wanted to talk about this with Rob because I do think that most of the people out there, most of you guys, really are not paying that close attention. Maybe you've heard about it in passing, but you're not really, your radar maybe isn't perked up the way it should be. Your ears aren't perked up. So, and I feel a sense of urgency to make sure people do know what's going on, they're aware, and they start taking steps. And I know you feel the same way, right, Rob?
Well, we all knew this day was coming, Ed. And unfortunately, when the day arrives, you don't want to believe it. But that's the whole point of being a prepper. Whether you're a financial prepper, a physical prepper, a spiritual prepper, there's different versions of it, right? And if you're a financial prepper, you've made plans and you've taken steps to minimize your exposure to the potential for the downside of what's going on. And we've all seen what a house of cards this actually is. One of the most interesting things to me is that this FDIC thing just didn't work. And we all know that it didn't work. We all know that the FDIC never had enough money to cover insurance on everybody's deposit. What a load of garbage. And even if the government goes and regulates and says that you can't do that, these banks go out and do whatever the hell they want. The word bank is too gentle. We need to call them banksters, like gangsters. These banksters are criminals. They're criminals of the highest order. And instead of worrying about good investments, instead of worrying about how to actually protect people's money and get good returns for people, they're worried about ESG scores, and they're worried about woke things that have got nothing to do with their core business of looking after your and my money when we trust them and we hand over our hard-earned cash to them. So, the FDIC has proved that it's inept and it's impotent. And then we had this big crash. So, the banking sector of the market crashed by, I think it was an average of like 60% or something. But then we had the dead cat bounce, right? The dead cat bounce because the government comes out and goes, yeah, it'll be all right. We'll be right. Don't worry. Everything will be okay. And then all the robots in the market go, the government said it'll be okay. And off goes the dead cat bounce. But I really believe that the end of the US economy and the end of the US dollar happened in 2008. When the minute that they had to move into the QE, remember this QE1, QE2, QE3, and they said they were going to stop it. And, they're just addicted to it. There was no other way for them to get this economy back to where it was. And really the quantitative easing was just a form of life support. And here we are now, we've printed ourselves to a place where you can't print any more money. because if you print more money, you're going to push up interest rates more, because that's the only thing that they've got to actually slow down the economy. But as soon as you push up the interest rates, you're going to create contagion amongst all these other banks. And all of a sudden, if people are starting to withdraw their money from the banks because they don't trust the system anymore, what a house of cards it actually is. It just shows you that the whole system's been on life support for the last, since 2008. So the last like 15 years, yeah. Literally, it's been a house of cards for 15 years, and they had the opportunity to fix it and to resolve it, but they never took that opportunity, which is a shame.
Yeah, well, you and I have been talking about this topic for an awful long time, and we've been calling it. Look, we should be getting some kind of a fruit basket from everyone out there. We've warned a lot of people about this exact thing that's going on right now. Nobody out there should be really impressed with these guys in their $3,000 suits on Wall Street. Listen, let me tell you, I worked on Wall Street for almost 30 years. That's why when I say things, hopefully it gives it a little bit more weight. I've seen this movie before. I know the game. I know doublespeak when I hear it. Now, I literally did an episode on my channel on the FDIC 3 days before this happened. And of course, I did another one in the FDIC 3 months before that. And I've been sounding the alarm. And you're absolutely right. The FDIC they had $128 billion of actual assets. But they're responsible for $9 trillion of eligible deposits. We refer to the modern day banking system as fractional reserve banking, right? Fractional reserve, lending. Well, prior to this worldwide flu that we had a few years ago, the requirement was to keep 10%, in reserves at the banks. But then the flu hit, and they lowered that to zero. So now it's not even fractional reserve banking. Now it's zero reserve banking. The banks don't have to keep any of your dough. When people put money into their bank, most people still think that it's their money. They still think that they're making a deposit. That's the wrong word. You're not making a deposit. You're loaning your money to the bank. Once you put your money into a bank, it is legally not considered your money anymore. So when you have a bank run, banks they can give you the proverbial middle finger, because what are you going to do? It all started, early last week with Silvergate Bank. And then a few days later, the big one hit, the Silicon Valley Bank. That was the big dog. Then we had Signature Bank follow up, on Monday. It's kind of funny, Rob, because they went under the day before they were due to receive a reward by the UK government for being such a good bank. $100 billion worth of United States treasuries. Now, this is the heart of the matter. The real culprit in all of this is the Federal Reserve and Jerome Powell. Now, they encourage these people to load their books with conservative debt. I mean, United States treasuries, that's about as conservative as you get, right? But we all know the bonds have an inverse relationship with interest rates. And banks are loaded to the gills now with interest rates because, again, during that big flu that we had a while back and all that stimulus money went out, they had a lot of money. They were flushed with cash, these banks, and they couldn't put out loans fast enough. So they had to end up buying a lot of these government bonds. But now, with interest rates going up at the fastest rate since 1990, these banks have lost a lot of money on these bonds because the value of the bonds go down as the interest rates go up.
And that's the problem right there, Ed, is because everybody's got their eyes on the stock market or an individual bank or an individual thing. But the reality is the bond market is the biggest market in the world. And the bond market is what underpins everything. And I'll give you a slightly different slant as well and tell me what you think here. So every treasury bill, every T-bill that's sold out there and every bond that's sold is now actually a war bond. So that's no longer... How are we funding the war in Ukraine? And how are we about to fund $1 trillion to the US military? And how are you going to fund the additional $2 or $3 trillion you're going to need to fight a war in Southeast Asia? The only way that you're going to do that is by raising capital back through society, which is what they did in World War II. And that's actually what's happening now under the guise of this economy. And one thing I want to pull you up on two things, if I could. So there's a guy out there named Professor Richard Warner, and I'll give you some links, and maybe you can just look him up and just connect his channel. He did some studies back in I think it was the early 2000s, about how the banking system actually works. And a lot of people think that it's fractional reserve lending. That's one concept, that if I give the bank $100, they can go away and lend 90 of that and keep 10% of it in reserve. But to your point, they no longer have to keep 10% in reserve. And it was really funny because so Richard Warner's like a finance professor. I can't remember his exact qualification, but he's a really smart dude, and he works in the banking system, right? His first job out of uni was working for these banks in Japan, when in the early 1990s, when their economy completely tanked, and they had it was just completely flatlined. It was like dead on arrival. And he commissioned a study for the first time to figure out how bankers made money. And where did the actual credit come from? So the way he did the study was by applying for a home loan for himself. And he asked the people at the bank, because they knew who he was, he said, can I do a study here to figure out where the money comes from when I apply for the loan? So he filled in the forms. He was approved for, I think it was like 200,000 euro for a house or something like that. And what he found was the bank actually created the credit. So the bank didn't like look over their shoulder and go, "Hey, Jono, move that 200 grand across over into Richard's account over there, will you? Because he wants to buy a house." It was not like in Fort Knox in the Cold War, when gold backed money and all the gold was in Fort Knox, and Portugal had a pile that was this big and Spain had a pile this big, and Spain paid a debt to Portugal, and all they did was move the gold from one side of the room to the other. They literally did that. That's actually what happened back in the day. In the banking system, you'd be forgiven for thinking that that's actually how it works. Or you'd be forgiven for thinking that there's a vault out the back and hey, Julie, can you just move 200 out of the vault and put it over into Richard's account? No. All the bank did was, yeah, he was approved, and they went there and they typed on the computer. And when he tells the story, it's like, really? That's how the system works? They typed on the computer, and all of a sudden he's had more zeros in his account than he had before. So the banking system is not what you think it is. And it's the reason that you haven't heard these stories before, you haven't seen this before, because if you knew how the system worked, you'd go, this thing's going to fall apart. That can't be real, surely. But throughout history, no fiat currency has ever survived. And what we have is a fiat currency. And the reason that people think that Bitcoin is an alternative to a fiat currency is because it takes the same amount of work to dig it out of the internet, like digging gold out of the ground. And that's why gold has a perceived value. And gold has the perceived value because it takes effort. Bitcoin has the perceived value because you have to mine that as well. But the reality is Bitcoin is just numbers on a computer as well. And it's not really much different, even though, it takes computer horsepower to do it. But it's not that much different to the fiat system that's out there. So the other point that I wanted to make, that you said you've seen this game before. And I've seen this game before. I've seen it happen before as well. But I'm actually not sure if we have, Ed. Because last time, you saw the crash of 1987. I remember when that happened as well. I remember my dad coming home from work and being going, oh, it was all grim because everybody that worked at Qantas invested in the stock market, right? That's what they did with their money back. And he read the newspaper, picked the stock and put his money on there, Warren Buffett style. And I remember that kind of upset my dad. But I also remember the crash, the dot-com crash. I also remember the 2008, and we've seen the 2020 crash as well. So if you live long enough, you see these things twice, but we seem to have seen it, you and me have seen it 4, 5, 6 times if you're paying attention to it. And if you're a student of history, you've seen it many more times than that as well, because you can just read about it and know what actually happened there. But the difference this time is that we're at the end of the system. They previously in 2008, that was the end of it, and they printed themselves out of it to solve it. But you can't print your way out of this anymore because of inflation. And if you start printing your way out of this, you're going to create the contagion that collapses the other banks, which destroys the economy. And all of a sudden, that Chinese money is going to come home to roost for you guys. And as soon as the Chinese economy starts bringing everything back home, because those US dollars are now worthless, get them over there, get rid of them. Your dollar is going to crash so hard, and it's no longer going to be the world's reserve currency. And everything that the US has in global hegemony and all of the things that are associated with the petrodollar and your military will go away, because now countries no longer have to actually trade in US dollars. And that's going to be a real shame.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I take your point, but it seems like with every major financial crash, we're always in territory that we haven't seen before. It's always it's a matter of degree, right? It's a whole new. And
Do you
now,
think we're in? Do you think we're in digital currency territory now?
oh yeah,
I think,
well,
and that's the difference, right? We haven't seen that before. We're in uncharted waters, and the only way to solve this problem is to get rid of all retail
no,
banks, to get rid of all commercial banks, and the Fed will take charge of it.
I agree with all that. And I was gonna get there. You beat me to the punch. But in the sense that the markets are made of human beings, and human beings are emotional creatures. It's always the same. The routine. So when I say I've seen it before, I know what the pattern is. There's always, we saw what happened over the weekend. All the big, every brand name politician and financial expert was booked on talk shows, assuring us that there's nothing to worry about. Everything's fine. We got your back.
It's fake, hey. The whole system's fake, man. It's they all get together and they collude together. It doesn't matter what side of politics you're on, they're all the same. It's both sides of the same coin. And the narrative that they perpetuate is all exactly the same. And that in my view is the most dangerous thing of all, because it gives you that comfort and that security if you're seeing it on mainstream media. You go, oh well, things are okay. It's oh well, that's good. And then I just get on with my day. But the problem is that this is unfolding in ultra high definition, in ultra slow motion. And when something's unfolding in slow motion, it's almost too. If there was a car accident in front of you at 90 miles an hour, it would be over in a second. But this 90-mile-an-hour head-on collision that's actually happening is happening 1 millimeter at a time.
Right.
And that's the reason people are not reactive to it. And to your point, they're not actually paying as much attention to it as they should. You started out by saying that. And I think that's the reason why, is because it seems to happen really quickly. The government says, yeah, it's all right. It's okay. It's all good. And everybody just goes about their lives. But the reality is it's still happening in the background. It's like, what the hell? This is scary stuff.
And that is my point. Every crisis starts out in that slow motion. It's like watching that slow motion train wreck, right? That slow motion car crash. They always start. It's one little bank, big deal.
Yeah, it'd be right. $200 billion. That's not much, man.
2 banks. What does that mean to me?
3.
Three.
That's a charm.
I've got to take my kids to a movie, so I don't have time to think about this. It always starts slow until it happens fast. Every once in a while, I bring out the stock charts and the market charts, and I show people the important levels. And again, a few days ago, I drew the important levels, and we're taking out those levels. Now, when I make the big predictions in the market, I thought, well, I draw ahead of time. Well, if this level gets taken out, that's where the big air gap is. Now, it might take quite a while for it to break that level. It might not ever break that level, but that's the important level. Well,
you're right. You got to look at that every day. You and what you're saying, because I look at it, I watch your video and I go, oh, cool. But unless I actually remind myself that that's the level, and because I go from one YouTube video to the next, to one finance guide to the next, and they're all fantastic. They're all really good because they're all skillful in their own right. But unless I make a note about it and actually do something actionable about that particular thing, then it's all just white noise in the background, and you might as well not even pay it. You might as well watch mainstream media.
This is why people have to be worried right now. Because and again, I've talked about this so much on my channel, I'll sound like a broken record. But listen, I've been telling people for a year now that when this crisis happens, I told them this is the way it's going to happen. Some major brand name bank is going to wake up one day and it's out of business.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's when thing, and you're not going to be able to get your money out of the bank, which is what happened with the people at SVB. We saw the lines outside the door. People couldn't get their money. That's the way bank runs work. Okay. And then,
I had a question for you on that point. Sorry to keep interjecting, but as you're saying, I want to kind of take that little tangent. Why does it always happen on a Friday, man?
Oh, well, there's a reason. I think
it goes,
yeah. And I think I know why you're asking, because in my previous video, just before this, I did a video talking about exposing the FDIC, because there was a secret meeting with the FDIC advisory board that wasn't meant to be public. And I exposed it. I put it on my YouTube channel. I made a video of it. And these people were talking because they didn't think they were being recorded. They didn't think their conversation was going to be public. And one of the comments made by one of the women there, She said, yeah, well, if we need to make this kind of an announcement, it's best if we do it on a Friday night. Now, this is par for the course. This is not just FDIC, but this is kind of a rule of thumb on Wall Street. If a company or a big firm, or if the SEC or if the Federal Reserve needs to make a life-changing announcement, they prefer to do it on a Friday night because the markets are going to be closed then. And so there's nothing you can do about it over the weekend. This is
I want to highlight something there as well, which we all know. And, I don't know what it's like when I go to a gym in America, because I've never been to a gym in America. But when I go to my local gym here in Sydney, there's a bunch of screens. And in the weight room, there's a couple of screens around. You don't really pay much attention to that. They got some like music film clips playing or something like that to distract you, even though 100% of people have got headphones in their ears when they're in the gym. But when you're in the cardio space, there's like all the screens. There's like 7 or 8 screens in a row. And if you go there in the morning, they've got the news on. And I go there in the morning and I kind of look down like that because it's actually a little bit overwhelming for your brain because you're looking at all these screens like this, right? But if you're there at the top of the hour or the bottom of the hour when the news cycle is going, you will see in Australia, we've really only got like 3 channels, right? You've got ABC, Channel 7, Channel 9, and Channel 10 doesn't really have news in the morning. They have like a news bulletin, but they don't have a morning show, so to speak. But when you see these 3 channels lined up, they play the same news stories in the same order at the same time. And sometimes it's a little bit kind of disjointed. And you sort of think, well, I used to think that, well, it's just the news. They all get the news from the same sources and they're all reporting on the same things. But after that funny flu that we had in the last couple of years, I now have changed my tune. And now I really believe that they all collude together to communicate the narrative. And when you look back at those times and the narrative that each one of those channels was perpetuating, it's all exactly the same. So you see that in the United States as well, because you've got infinitely more channels than what we do, but those mainstream media is perpetuating the same story. And the really interesting thing is it's happening at the same time. And I noticed as well, it actually happens on the radio. Who listens to the radio, right? Probably when you get in the car, your radio's on. If your Bluetooth's not connected, you listen to it. At the top of the hour, I promise you, if you cycle through the different channels that are on the radio, they're reporting the same things on the radio all at the same time. And you would think you'd be forgiven for thinking that these companies are independent. And if you spoke to those people that worked at those companies, they'd be like, no, we don't talk to Channel 9 or to ABC. What are you talking about? No, we don't. But it actually is, because when I look up at the screen and I see them all together as plain as day, you're all reporting on exactly the same things at exactly the same time. And I'm not talking about the flood in Western New South Wales or the bushfire over in Victoria or something like that. That's news that all of them report on that. And that's, I kind of get that because that's a news story and a developing news story. But when you're talking about finance in the same way, and you're talking about the collapse of a bank in the same way, you can't not think that this happened on a Friday, so they got together and they perpetuate the narrative. What are they saying about it? What are they saying about it? What are they saying about it? And I would suggest to you that a lot of the reporting that goes on here in Australia is just plain lazy. They're looking up and out over the horizon at what's happening elsewhere in the world before it happens here, because we're kind of in the future here compared to you guys, but they're looking up and out to the United States to see what's happened. What are they reporting on there? And then it's just a matter of aggregating everything together. Right now, I could go and find the same news article 10 times, copy and paste it into a notepad, paste it into AI and say, summarize it. Now I've got my own story about the same thing. And that'll take me all of about 9 minutes to do. And I would suggest to you that that's what they've been doing for years. And that's why I say it's like lazy reporting that goes on.
This time around, again, is nothing to worry about. We got everything under control. But this is why people need to subscribe to channels like yours and mine, because we're going to give you the truth. Sorry, guys. By the way, please give this video a like, because it's my best, tool to state, because I'm always at risk of being censored when I talk about this kind of thing. So please give me a like.
You know what else really helps, Ed, is if people have got some comments about this video, put the comments below, right? And if you've got a question, put the word question in front of your comment, and let's get the community talking to each other and offering answers on these questions, because otherwise you're just getting my perspective and your perspective. Let's get some more perspectives going in there. One of the things I love about these conversations that you and I have is that because we're very like-minded and we've got a very similar belief system about so many different things, but you end up in an echo chamber where you're kind of just saying back to me what I'm saying to you. So I like to get the comments going in my YouTube channel to actually get more opinions happening. And I like when somebody disagrees with me. Just don't be a jerk about it, right? You're allowed to disagree with people and put forward a different opinion and whatnot. I've seen a bunch of disagreement on a whole lot of war videos that I've done recently. And I was looking at the comments going, at first it triggers you a little bit. You kind of look at it and go, what an idiot. What does he know? Hang on a minute. That's actually pretty valid what he's saying. That's true. I could see how somebody would see it from that perspective, although I don't really agree with it. That's okay. They're entitled to their opinion. And I just leave it there, right? And then it sparks a conversation and people start talking about it as well. So I think this is far more important to be talking about than just about any other topic that's out there, but it's not been spoken about, to your point.
This banking crisis, it's going to get a lot worse. It has the potential of being a lot worse than the 2008 crisis. And I know you were like 4 years old during that crisis, but the 2008 financial crisis was, there were days where we'd wake up not knowing whether the financial system was going to be in existence. So that's what we were going through at that time.
I think you're right. It'll be far worse than 2008. And I think we're on the precipice of having to be in the CBDC space. And that is a scary proposition for me, because that's a complete rearrangement of the financial system. And if you don't know, ladies and gentlemen, central bank digital currencies the whole point of it is that the Federal Reserve takes over your personal bank account. And there's no more Barclays Bank or Bank of America or something like that. That goes away completely. And then all of a sudden, we've just got the Federal Reserve that's controlling every aspect of your life. But you won't be given fiat currency. That's the difference, because the Fed know, just the same as we do, that all fiat currencies fail. And so the difference is you'll move to a credit system. Yeah. And you might remember the movie back in the 1990s. It was one of my favorite sci-fi movies with Arnie. It was called Total Recall, where he gets on the spaceship and he goes to Mars, and suddenly he's in Mars driving around in a taxi driven by a robot or something like that. And the money that he had was like Monopoly money. I remember thinking that as a young fellow, that was kind of funny. But they were credits. Yeah. And there's another really good show on Netflix called Altered Carbon. And it's the idea, it's a futuristic show. You're in 400 years in the future, whatever it is, right? And the way that the financial system works, like he goes into the bar and he's kind of like leaning on the bar like this, and the guy asks, the robot asks him what he wants. He gets it like that, and he goes and he spits on the counter, and he pays with his DNA, right? So the sensor recognizes his DNA, whether you put your fingerprint there, you look at it, or you spit on it, the same thing happens, and he's got credits in his account. So would a system of credits work better than a fiat system? Probably. Yes, probably. Maybe if you fast forward 400 years into the future, it would work incredibly well, because they ironed out all the kinks and they figured out how to actually do it. And they figured out how to have the exchange happen, the fair exchange. I want to buy dinner. Well, it's $20. Okay, I'm going to give you 20 credits. And the exchange of credits and the system and the technology that backs it is seamless. Absolutely. I think the system would work incredibly. I think it's actually a really good idea. Maybe not run by the government, but the theory of it works.
Okay. All right.
But we're caught in a transition here. And the transition between the fiat system that's existed here for the last 2,000 years and moving to some dystopian technocracy by autocrats and all of these oligarchs that run this system is an absolute disaster. Well, and then the destruction of the US dollar as well in the process. Man, oh man, I want to fast forward 400 years into the future where it's squared away, not have to deal with the transition that we're about to, because it's a nightmare.
Well, the private industry did come up with a solution. They came up with Bitcoin. They have the cryptocurrency, blockchain technology. The free world capitalism solves a lot of problems. I mean, capitalism has solved more problems for humankind than any other system in the world. You incentivize Absolutely. People, give people a profit incentive.
There's the theory that the CIA actually created that, right? Because we don't know who Nakamoto is. And, if that was the case, the mistake that they made is they made it like cash, because it's anonymous. And if it was a trackable system that was in there, then the government would be, okay, cool. And look, not everything that the government does is bad. the government is run by morons. There's no doubt about that. Doesn't matter what country you live in the world, they're absolute fools. But the fact that we have this incredible infrastructure around us shows us that government, for the large part, is actually pretty good. The roads, the rail, the infrastructure, the transport.
Okay, hold on there. Okay, so local government, okay, because they're close to the people, right? They're not okay. You complain. You can walk into the guy's office and say, "Hey, my street has a bunch of potholes in it. Get on it." All right. So
and that's the reason. That's the reason why governments don't like things like crypto and Bitcoin, is because they can't control it. And what I'm suggesting is that the current financial system, it requires us to pay tax, and the tax funds the society that we live in. And without society like it is now, there'd be no law and order. It would be like The Last of Us, like a TV show where we're all killing each other. There'd be no ambulance to come and rescue you when you fall down and break your leg. That we wouldn't have what we have in this society. So, I'm not an anarchist to say that all of these things need to go away. What I'm really concerned about in this time in history is that we're going to be a transition is going to be forced upon us that none of us understand the ramifications of, particularly the powers that be, because the people that govern this system, not the bureaucrats, the leaders of the systems that we all live under, are morons. Every single one of them are liars. They all lie. Every single one of them lie. And then the people underneath them, the bureaucrats, are forced to implement their lies. And that's what you say. You started out by saying people are not paying enough attention.
Right.
And this is the reason why it's such a problem. And people have the figures. But
people rightly have very low expectations from their politicians now, right? They shouldn't try. I mean, that's the big flaw in a big government system, is that there is no accountability. I mean, in our system, it feels like the more you fail, the more you get promoted. You're right. We have
failing upwards.
Yeah, failing upwards. There is no accountability. So they keep making the same mistakes and exacerbating the mistakes. And then there is a deep state out there with an agenda. And it almost doesn't matter who the elected officials are anymore, because the deep state, they have their agenda, and they're really the ones who are going to enforce the laws they like, not the ones that they don't.
The cops are going to be at your door shortly.
What? Yeah. The three things everyone should be doing is, number one, reduce your exposure to your bank. Number two, okay. I mean, do I sound brilliant or what? I mean,
stop there. Again, you're like a prophecy god.
Yeah. So where are the gifts back? At least say thank you in the comment section, okay? So I've been telling you for a year, reduce your exposure to your bank. Number one, put some of that money into gold and silver. Yeah. And number three, establish streams of passive recurring income. Do those three things. That's something. Those are all simple things to do, especially the first two. Now, Rob and I can't help you with the first one, getting money out of your bank. That's on you. I mean, but if you've been watching more than 2 or 3 of my videos and Rob's videos, and you wake up one day and your bank has shuttered its doors and you haven't gotten any money out, please don't come crying to us. I'm sorry, a little bit tough love there. Okay.
Can I add one to your list of 3? Make it a list of 4.
Sure.
In times of uncertainty, like, it doesn't matter when you were in history, times are always uncertain. Whether it was the Cold War in the 1960s, 70s, or 80s, or when it was in the dot-com era, there was always massive uncertainty in banking systems and stock markets and property markets. It's always been uncertain. And the reason it's been uncertain is because the media would led you to believe that. But you can read plenty of books to find out that a lot of that is true. And it's all about your perspective, because in times of uncertainty, people can make millions of dollars and they can create exceptional wealth as in the process. I saw the banking thing on Saturday morning, my time, Friday, your time there, because I'm in the future here. And I thought to myself, why don't I just position myself to get short? Why don't I go and put 10 grand in a CFD account and get myself short on the Aussie 200? Because as soon as that market wakes up in the morning, it's going to go boom, and then I'm going to go, whoa, there's my 10 grand, now 30 grand. Thank you.
You know what? Can I do a screen share?
Yeah, sure.
Show you something good. I'm gonna impress people even more.
Did you get yourself short and trade it?
Okay, so a few months ago, I posted my first trading idea that I've done in months. Because I used to have a channel. I had a channel 15 years ago on YouTube where I did exactly what I'm going to, and I found it like a week ago when I was cleaning up my site. So I completely forgot about that channel. And I started that channel back in the 2008 crisis. You'll see the dates on those, and I was telling people day by day, this is what I'm doing. I give them trading ideas. It was a fun time. I was one of the first people on YouTube to be
Imagine if you had stuck with that, man. You would have had like 25 million followers and be not Hey Ed, you would have been Hey Profit.
So I said, so I did give. Now I don't give tips on my channel anymore. That's not. I don't want it. I'm not a financial advisor. I don't.
You're allowed to. That's why. Yeah.
But I was compelled to share a trading idea that I was going to do. So this is FAS, F-A-S. And this is an ETF on the banking industry. See, bold three, and this is 3X. This is a highly leveraged vehicle. So this is a 3X vehicle on the banking industry. And look what that's been doing here. Anyway, so there is another ETF called FAS.
Almost the same.
Now FAS,
the opposite. It's the opposite of it.
Right. Yeah. FAS is a bear 3X ETF on the banking industry.
Yeah.
Look when book 18 there. Look what it did. Okay. So this is what I did.
The other one did the opposite.
Yeah. So right in here, and that video is still up, by the way. If you guys want to go and look at it, it's still there. Right in here, I didn't buy the FAS. I bought options on FAS.
You have to, because the options are good because it's binary. You have to be right or you'll be wrong.
Exactly.
There is no, it went up, 0.5%. I got a little bit. I covered my costs. No, man, you're right. You're all in, baby, when you're doing that.
For what, 2.5, 3 months there, I was watching paint dry. Then when it took out that 18 there, boom.
Off it goes.
And this is where I'm making my money. It's just you and me talking. I'm sure nobody's watching this video, so I can talk. So this stuff. So there is way of making money.
So number 4 for your list is that. So you've got reduce your exposure to the banking system, buy some gold and silver, and figure out passive recurring income. So number 3 on your list there is really super positive. And I want to add something there and say, wherever you are in history, who is it that's profiting? So to your point, when you're on the other side of that chart, that's the opposite of the banking crash. You're getting the upside of that. So what I do is I look and say, who is getting the upside of these things? Well, right now in Ukraine, buy some Lockheed Martin shares, for heaven's sake, or buy some options in that, because this is only going to get bigger. Raytheon, BAE, all of those defense contracting companies. But when we move into times of crisis, and we've seen that pretty extensively in the last couple of years, the thing that has spiked incredibly well, and there's been a massive transfer of wealth, has been big pharma, but more importantly, big tech. So if you can figure out a way to make money out of big tech, because my view is that big tech is largely insulated from what's going on in the outside world. So the e-commerce economy, and I've seen that in the last couple of years with lots of my clients, the e-commerce economy is not really touched by interest rates going up or down, by the housing market collapse, by the uncertainty in the banking system, because people are online just buying stuff. And if you think about your user behavior, when you go to Amazon to buy something or you go to eBay to buy something, I don't really give a stuff about what's happening in the banking system. I just buy what I need. And that's where I say it's largely unaffected by external circumstances. And in some ways, it's like there's 2 economies. There's a real world physical economy that I see on a day-to-day basis. And then there's the online economy. So what is it that you're doing? So this is point number 4 that I'll add to your list there, to capitalize on the upside of all of this uncertainty. And you've got to create passive recurring income to do it. So that's one aspect of it. And there's plenty of programs out there, and you're in a couple of really good ones that help people to do that. But what else can you do? Because it's not just about passive recurring income. If I've got 25 sources of passive recurring income, I'm just going to be sitting around all day doing something. And I've got to take that money and put it into something else so I don't lose it. So what else can you put it into to create more income for yourself, to live that life that you actually want to do? So keep your eye on the upside of all of these things, even if we seem to be in a perpetual rolling over. That's what it feels like, right? The chart's rolling over, and it feels like it's perpetually here. And the doom and gloom of because markets take forever to go up, and they just take a minute to go down, and it feels like it's always on the precipice of collapsing like that. So if you're short at the top of that, then it does go down. I mean, that's easy. It's easy to capitalize on.
But yeah, look, one of the least known facts out there about the Depression, about the crash of 1929, is that an awful lot of millionaires were made during that time. That's true with every major crash. An awful lot of millionaires are made by people who are prepared for it. Personally, me and people in my group, and I know you, we're excited. I'm sorry, people out there, if you're not, but we're excited about what's coming up because we're going to take advantage of it. And if you want to take advantage of it too, join the Hey Ed WhatsApp group. I have my email in the description below. Reach out to Rob and don't be a victim in this. Take advantage of this. This could be a life-changing opportunity for you. So
yeah, absolutely.
That's the message I want to get across.
Yeah, absolutely. It's we talk about the doom and gloom of it all the time because it actually, we're drawn into that mainstream doom and gloom as well. But actually, it's just a matter of perspective. And it's a matter of, if you've got all of your money out of the bank and it's sitting in property, you'd be worried that the banking system's going to go away and then the property market's going to come undone because of it. But the reality is your money is far safer in a property than it is sitting in the bank, because over time the property is going to appreciate. Even if it pulls back by 20 or 30%, over time it'll catch back up. It's not going anywhere. Same with that. Exactly the same with that.
This is my preferred. The thing, property. Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. The reason why I like gold and silver as my preferred place to hide out is because it's liquid. I don't have to.
Yeah, you can offload it. Property is like a giant bar of gold that you can't offload. No one wants that giant bar of gold. It's too much.
Yeah, well, you can always saw it in half, or saw it,
You could. Airbnb it.
Yeah. No, the silver or gold will in times like this, it's got a history, It's
absolutely.
Okay, so that's the message. So that's why I wanted to talk about what's going on right now. I want to make people out there are really paying attention to this. Remember, number one, get your money out of the bank, at least some of it. The bulk of
Just take it out in cash, or did you turn it into something else, or
I took out
did
the
you
cash
turn it into toilet paper for your?
Well, that's not it's not a bad investment actually. The prepping material, because with inflation, anything I buy now, whether it's soup or for flour, or I'm not going to lose money on it. Because
I was like looking at a thing. I was watching a show last night, just chilling out at the end of the day, and my missus was scrolling through her Instagram. And I kind of like looked over at a shoulder what she's looking at, right? Because I'm not looking at Instagram, I'm looking at Telegram. It's a really interesting proposition.
Okay, that's interesting tip. I like my ways better personally.
I like your ways a lot better as well. People are always complaining, I don't have $30,000 to invest in gold or to put into this program or to do that. But what you do have is two arms and two legs to actually get on with it.
So in the program I'm in, 7K metals, you can buy gold silver fractionally. Buy for 10. You have $10.
Couple bucks.
$10.
Yeah.
So it's not just for the rich. Okay.
What you want to do is lock in the value that you've got. You got $1,000, put it into that, lock it in. Now it's worth $1,000. It might go up and down a little bit, but you're locking in. It's still worth that. And in 6 years' time, when the price of coffee's gone up 400%, hopefully that's gone up 400% for you as well. So it's the same value in the time that you've actually extracted that from it.
Well, if the value of the currency is going down, all these guys have to do is these are going to go up automatically.
They're going to go up.
I think it's a pretty safe bet to tell people. It's a pretty safe bet that currency is going to keep going down. That's what inflation is. Now, the inflation is going to go up, and I think we have a real good shot at hyperinflation because the only way of servicing the levels of debt that we have right now, the only way out, the only solution is to print more of it. And
best I can do for you, Ed. Sorry, nuclear war. War.
I love it. So everyone, please take this seriously, and please get at least some of your money out of the bank. Sit on it for a couple of weeks or a month. You can always put it back in the bank. If what I think is going to happen doesn't happen, no harm done. You haven't lost anything. You can always put it back in the bank. But if that event does happen, you don't want to be one of those people standing in line like the people who were doing it last week. You don't want to be one of those people.
What a mess, huh?
Okay, so I want to move on, segue into our next topic. So I'm going to give an official goodbye to the group because it's going to be a three-parter here. So Ed Anderson, live from Minnesota, with my good friend Rob Bruss in the mini-me country of Australia. Signing out.
See you, everyone. Bye.
Okay, and so make sure you take a look at the part 2. So signing out.
Copy that.